Sometimes it feels like every week I'm saying the same thing in different ways. Specifically that the many mysteries of Elden Ring continue to elude us. Every time we think we've reached the end of the rabbit hole, we find ourselves in a new warren with even more branching paths. In this episode, we'll be exploring another character in Elden Ring who's never physically met in the lands between. But unlike others, who were champions likely now long dead, we believe there's something other than death preventing us from ever truly encountering him. Today we're going to take a closer look at Rosus, the Usher of Death and keeper of the locations of many of Elden Ring's mysterious catacombs. Who was Rosus? Why do all depictions of him take on this inhuman form? And why would someone who seems, at a surface level, to be associated with those who live in death, cast golden light that pierces through darkness? Welcome to the Elden Lore series. If this is your first time here, thank you so much for checking out our content. If you learned anything new or just enjoy our way of exploring Elden Ring, please consider subscribing to the channel. Every sub helps our community grow, and if there's one thing you need to know about our channel, it's that interacting with our community is one of our favorite things to do. Whether we're streaming, putting out polls, or just responding to comments, we think fostering a strong community of people who want to discuss the nuances of Elden Ring is an honor and a privilege, and we don't take it lightly. Even if you don't subscribe, thanks for taking the time to be with us today. And with that said, let's get back to today's topic. Your first encounter with Rosus was likely an accident. I know I was confused the first time I saw one of these creepy statues and was greeted with the message, "Guide and gatekeeper for those returning to the roots." From a gameplay perspective, these statues are an ingenious way of helping players find catacombs and dungeons they would have likely overlooked. The light they offer guides us along the way until we find the site of grace associated with each statue, and after activating it, the statue goes dim. That said, these statues don't tell us who they are, and it's not until we purchase the Imp Shade's note from a nomadic merchant that we learn his name. Notes sold by a nomadic merchant imparting knowledge in brief. Nothing can touch the shades of imps in the hero's graveyard. Only Rosus's light can give them form. Only once we find these same statues in the hero's grave, now equipped with golden light, can we put a name to the form, Rosus. The Rosus statues are uncanny and come across as contradictory. He looks shriveled and decrepit, not unlike what one would expect from those who live in death. He has long claws for hands, and 3 clawed toes on each foot. He also has a significantly hunched back and elongated neck. All of this seems to indicate he should be antithetical to the Golden Order, but the statue also has branches forming around him, and Rosus himself wears a crown of branches. So why is it that this being guides us to catacombs with Erdtree roots? Before fleshing this out anymore, we'll want to take a look at the only weapon in the game associated with this character, Rosus's axe. The description of this axe tells us, Usher of Death, Rosus, who shows the path to the catacombs throughout the lands between, is depicted on this ritual axe. The dead easily lose their way, and have always been in sore need of a guiding hand. The axe itself depicts what is meant to be Rosus, with a few skeletons reaching out toward him, and it comes with the Ash of War, Rosus's summon, which is an exact copy of the Tibia's summon spell. This spell tells us, the dead have long been left to wander, what they need is leadership. This lines up well with Rosus's title of Usher of Death. He himself is not one of those who live in death, but he is instead a guide, helping these spirits reach the Erdtree roots where they might find peace. If we also consider his statues casting light in the shape of the Erdtree sigil in various heroes' graves, it seems clear he is directly associated with the Golden Order. It's hard to say when these statues were created, as we don't have a strong grasp on how far the roots of the Erdtree stretch across the lands between. It's possible they reach out to the entire land, but there's also the notion that the roots we find in some catacombs are those of the minor Erdtrees, so it's possible these statues may have been erected post-shattering. That said, the presence of Rosus statues in the heroes' graves points more heavily toward the image of Rosus being around pre-shattering. This means these statues may have been adopted as guides to the Erdtree roots later on. As to their purpose of guide and gatekeeper, we think it's fair to assume that Rosus' statues were meant to help travelers find their way to tree roots in order to provide some with Erdtree burials. If the Golden Order wanted these places hidden from the common folk, activating and following Rosus' light would be a good way to lead their own people without making the knowledge of these locations readily available. So we have an idea of the purpose of Rosus and his statues, but who was he in life, and why does he look like those who live in death? There is no written lore on the visage of Rosus, but we want to put forward a theory. Rosus does not exist, or rather, he was never a real person. We believe that Rosus was created as a way of appropriating the religious depictions utilized by those who came before the Golden Order, when bodies were burned with ghost flame and the death-right birds ruled over death. This explanation can account for a few of the more eccentric design decisions behind the Rosus statues. His 5-clawed fingers, 3-clawed toes, and elongated neck can all be found on the death birds as well. Pair this with a ghostly visage, and sprinkle in some details associated with the Erdtree, such as his tree branch crown and the branches around his body, and you have a recipe for rewriting history, a pastime we know the Golden Order was fond of. Rogier tells us how the Golden Order is willing to rewrite its rules and history to make itself stronger, and the adoption of Sarosh, Lord of Beasts, as King Regent shows us that the Golden Order is not above something like stealing the iconography of older religions in an attempt to wipe away their history, leaving nothing but their own religious beliefs alive and well. Keeping all of this in mind, we don't think Rosus ever truly existed. He is nothing more than a bastardized representation of the old ways of burning the dead in a different cycle of reincarnation, warped to now lead others to continue feeding the Erdtree with the souls it needs to fuel its own cycle. What do you think of our theory on Rosus, the Usher of Death? Do you believe he once existed and had the more literal job of leading those seeking Erdtree roots to their destinations? Or is he simply an invention of the Golden Order, meant to obscure history and twist it to their customs and traditions? Do you think Rosus could be tied more closely to those who live in death, or Fia, the deathbed companion? Were these statues erected across the lands between before or after the shattering? There are no wrong answers, as the game does not provide much on Rosus, so we look forward to reading the wild speculation that's sure to be happening in the comments. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you're always notified when we upload our newest episode. Thank you again for joining us. We can't wait to see you again for more Elden Lore.